All right, welcome back, everyone, to IT405's week 7 here, where part of our addendum to our labs are to kind of work through in-class demos, giving you new techniques, new styles that kind of mimic what we've been learning about as apart from software. This is kind of more AI guidance, but just showing you different ways that we can work within different constraints. So the first one, excuse me, lab that I wanted to run through with you is about investigating email and simple. I wouldn't say simple necessarily, but chat logs, emails, and the hope is that with this that you'll be able to look at some of the IOCs or the indicators of compromise in emails and messages essentially, and then use some AI tools, prompts that we've been working with different summarization, I guess, techniques and look for patterns, detection of what might be sort of leaked out, if you will, and to look for AI support analysis and really the human element judgment too. There's different things you can see with your eyes and with what's AI providing to us, but ultimately we're going to use both, and then do a little construction of the incident and some of the communication artifacts. So there's a big thing in artifacts that are within emails, like domains and messages and timestamps. Likewise, there would be as well for mobile forensics, which would be kind of part 2 of the lab, a different lab here. But those artifacts are really, really important. That's what we're going to try to decipher, use AI for. But then also, part of the goal that we've been going through with this in any platform is there's always going to be limitations no matter what you are using. And so it's to think about the limitations of whatever prompt or activity or what have you that we'll be studying. So I'm going to drop in, I'm just going to go back and copy the scenario here for us. And again, this is for our suspicious email and chat activity. So, okay, let's drop this in here. So so I put this in there so that you can copy this in your groups, so that you all are acting as junior security analysts at basic, in your roles, your jobs, if you will, and you are going to assist in evaluating a potential insider assisted like phishing incident. For you pick your company, whatever it is that you want. I didn't want to name any there, but so some people, to give you the background on it, some other employees reported suspicious emails and requesting document access changes. So we've seen some of that, like either Google Docs or Microsoft or whatever that you're working with, and maybe in your roles. But then after, some sensitive files were accessed outside of normal business hours. So a good key there is time. Like, what is the typical business hour time? So security has provided email headers and internal chat logs for your analysis. So your goal really here in your teams are to determine whether the activity represents a phishing or social engineering attempt. There'll probably be some clues in there. And if there was any assistance from anyone internal, so kind of making that possibility from the inside out, like an inside source, and then a timeline to the best of our ability. And we'll do that for a couple of our labs here. And then maybe things that you found that you wanted to recommend. So we'll definitely be coming back to this. But what I'm going to provide to you shortly after we kind of step through what it is you'll be doing in your groups is I'll be providing to you several different data sets. One being a data set of email excerpts, which will have like sender information, the recipient type of thing, timestamps, subject lines, and some maybe partial headers in there and excerpts of emails, rather the content. And then I'll be sending you some of the initial chat logs, largely being a timestamp and text behind that you can look at. Then another data set, so there'll really be 3, and the last one being a known, what we'll kind of call a known indicators list, which will be suspicious domains that you'll be able to see. So that's one thing. And then normal business hours, that's what we'll be working with, that are known factors. And then get a chance to sort of work with AI to do this. So, I encourage people, since this is one of which that is a lab that focuses on exploring these emails and looking to see if there's any suspicious activity going on in that. You're going to use AI in your groups. I'll break you up probably to two groups since I think we just have, let's see, remaining here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. Well, two groups of 3 probably for what we have. And with that, you and your team will be working in a group with several tasks, and normally the two predominant tasks are going to be, one, you're going to use AI to conduct like an assisted log triage of what's going on, and so I'll send this to you so you can think about what that is. And then the human validation part too. Like we said, you can see things with your eyes, and so we're going to kind of do a compare and contrast with AI, and then your eyes. What are you seeing? What's going on with that? So to put the goals up here first, let me drop that in the chat. So these are the end goals from your group. End group goals. So I'll kind of call this the summative findings. So we'll just drop that out there right now for you all to see. Okay, whenever I copy and paste in here, it gets a little bit goofy. Okay. All right, so your end goal in the chat there for your end group goals, some of the summative findings would be, looking for primary indicators, suspicious indicators, a timeline, and whether or not there's maybe insider involvement likely. And then, like maybe a limitation that you. So that's kind of the final reporting here, but we'll spend maybe a few minutes. So we have the scenario. Just to recap, that scenario again is you're going to be working as a little analyst there and some suspicious emails. You're going to check those out. So I'll be again sending you in the chat our 3 data sets, and this is a sample prompt. One of the things that we've used is how do we develop better prompts, and here is a sample prompt for, I'll call it just email chat log diagnosis from a forensic standpoint anyway. This is just an example. So you could try yours and your group. And whoop, sorry about that, everyone in meeting. Okay, there we go. Okay. So this is a sample, just one that I cooked up here, but you can try this once you get into your groups and your team, see what you can come up with. So this is just simply summarize suspicious patterns in this email log and identify anomalies in timing or sender domains. So this is just kind of a quick canvas, a quick brush stroke of evaluating an email. And so I'll send you next, so you can practice with this, try this, but we'll do probably at least 20 minutes in your teams, and I might come into each group here and check out to see how you all are doing. So in your first task here that, let's see here, you're going to use AI here. Let me copy this and drop this in here. Okay. All right, so task 1 for you. Kind of try to summarize this and keep it as clean as possible here for us. All right, so your task 1 is there, and I'm going to drop in there task 2, which is the human element. Okay. Which is kind of a little bit easier one because it's your human intellect here at work. So these are the two tasks that go along with your the little scenario that's posted up above, and then you have your end goals. but here are your tasks. And I have some sample prompts in there that you could try that I have in there, but you know, you can certainly go crazy on whatever it is that you want to use. So I'm going to send out for you the two primary sets of data. And the first one is going to be for us the email excerpts. So this is the first one. This is the first piece of evidence. Email log excerpts. Email log. Here we go. Okay. So that's an email log. And then I'm going to drop out as data set one. And then the internal chat logs I'm going to drop in here next for you. Okay. And then the things that we know already, you know, like this is really the known indicators, as I'll call them. The known, generally known indicators that you may want to take note of here. Okay, just some things that we know that can help guide you in your prompts. So any suspicious or weird looking domains or normal business hours. So that's what we're up against. You'll take these two or three different materials or data sets, if you will, and then run them through different prompts. So again, those goals are to use AI to kind of assist in that log, summarize communication patterns, look for unusual timing, flag possible phishing indicators, detect behavioral anomalies. I have a couple prompts there that you could try. And then that human validation part is see if you can find anything that confirms maybe what AI is finding manually just by looking at it, looking at data, looking at numbers, what have you in there. And then it's taking a look at those known indicators, like suspicious domains. You'd be probably able to see that with your eyes, and like business hour of time, you know, times of day. So run some of those prompts and check in on those. Again, you have your end goals up above in the chat log, which is look for any suspicious indicators discovered, timeline of events, whether insider involvement could be potentially likely, and maybe a limitation that you might see or not. I don't know. So with that, we'll put you into two groups here, and I think one person had to drop out, or so we'll have a team of three, or a group of three and a team of two. So we'll see how we can do this here. So maybe Andrew and Sam will put you together, if that is okay. So we'll do assign manually. So group one. Okay, so Andrew, Sam, we'll put you in a group here. Team one. Okay, and then Abden or Chris, Gerald, put you guys know, and I may kind of bounce in and check on you here a little bit, but we'll do at least probably 15 minutes just to see where people are at. If you need a little more time, we can do that, or come back and kind of talk through some things. But here we go, gang. All right. All right, welcome back, groups. And so once again, what we were attempting to look at was that of our scenario, and that scenario again is in the chat. Just to rehash that, we're looking for specifically suspicious email chat activity, and so you all were simulating a brief role as a security analyst looking for a potential phishing incident, and looking to see if there were sensitive files accessed outside of time. And your goal to report back some of the findings there are in the chat just below the scenario, which were to see if you could identify any suspicious indicators that you may have discovered, a potential timeline that you could share or drop in the chat, and then if or to what extent maybe some insider involvement was likely. So, and of course, maybe a limitation or two. But the idea behind this, there were several. One, that you could use AI to look at building a log, sort of a triage log of things that were happening. And then there was the human validation element. And I always want to encourage that, because no matter if we're dealing with software or AI software or whatever it is, this is the critical thinking part. You can't have just software do everything for you. I mean, to an extent. Likewise, you can't have AI do everything for you, again, to an extent. You have to have the critical thinking element to be able to understand whether or not my output is correct or not. And that's where I always want to reemphasize the human validation. So you had the two main data sets. And so our goal then was to take a look and see what you could find for our report out. So again, there was, what did you find for maybe potential? We'll kind of step through them. Each group could designate maybe a spokesperson there. But for each group, you want to talk about maybe the primary suspicious indicators, what you may have found relating to this email and chat log. So Gerald, with your group, that was yourself, Abdenor, and Chris.
That's correct. Yeah. I don't know. Well, I guess I got my mic off. Chris and
I thought you
Abner,
were
you
ready
could,
just to speak.
Chris and
Chris or
Abner, I guess
Abdenor?
you could jump in as well too. So, um, the domain name of the CO, right? So the first thing that we didn't drop it in the chat first. We did the human element for both. So both the email and then the internal chat. And then once we discussed it amongst our team, and we kind of came all to agreement on what our findings were, then we dropped it in the chat to see where we were and how close we were. And so we identified like the domain had the CO. It was a late email. Um, and then also the link, right? Like, to put your credentials in there. So that was suspicious. But right away, the first thing was that domain as being CO because Jay Miller had
Yep,
the same email but .com, right?
yep,
So
yep.
the whole spelling. So right away, that was a dead giveaway.
Mhm.
And then when we got in the chat, we read more of what Sam and Alex were discussing, and then Jordan came in later. But what we noticed was that Sam had did click the link, and then Alex responded, and then Sam like IT is not aware of it, and then Sam did not respond for like another almost 4 hours, maybe 3 hours. In the three
Uh,
hours, I mean
that was Alex.
Alex,
Yeah.
sorry, Chris, you're right. Alex did not respond back to Sam. And then Jordan jumped in around that, that after that, right after Alex responded, and he was like, "You, this is the third time tonight." So, he was working late, right, which is at 6:55, 7 o'clock. So it was more to me like it was Alex. What we thought or what we assumed, that he was doing the exfiltration of the information, and he was the one who created that internal email to get information from his employee. So that was more of an internal infiltration. That's what we got.
So I knew this was interesting because you guys approached it from the human side first, which is always, at the get-go, it might be to say, let me apply the human constraint, the human eye, the human condition first. That way, whatever I am prompting, whatever I'm generating, I already know, generally speaking, what I might be looking to see from an output. So it adds the appraisal value upfront first, so that
Hmm.
when you receive an output, you're kind of like, oh, okay, is this
And Chris,
logical? Is
did you
this
want to add
valid?
anything? I'm sorry.
Chris or Abnor?
Oh no. Well, I didn't really have much. That second email, that was just we kind of looked at the chat first, and then like we kind of referred back to that, just confirming our suspicions that Alex was the one that was doing something suspicious, and looks like he was using Proton Mail, which we threw that into AI, and it said that it was like a email provider that was like used for encryption and anonymity. So we
Yep.
kind of confirmed that from looking at the chat.
Yep, that's good. Did you guys use, what did you use? Did you use for your AI? Did you use Gemini,
Nope,
GPT?
I use Chat GPT. Yep.
Did it generate like a time series for you?
It
And
kind of did.
if that did, if you think of it to for you guys to drop that in, it might be kind of fun to see.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Oh, just to compare with the other groups there. Now, the other one, so there's a timeline, and so we kind of talked about whether there's likely insider involvement. So that was kind of suspected Alex there. And the limitation, did you guys find any potential limitations observed in any AI analysis of this?
Not that I noticed, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we wasn't looking at for AI to because we felt confident about our answers so much that
Yep.
we didn't really look for AI to give us more information, which it did, which Chris just just alluded to, but so we didn't look at it in that perspective, or we didn't dig more into it to see if it provided limitations because we felt confidence within our answer
Yep.
on the human side.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll offer up with some key takeaways. We'll hear from the other. Thank you, Gerald, Abner, Chris. Appreciate you guys there. And there's a new message dropped in. Thinking that was maybe Sam that dropped it in for Sam, yourself, and Andrew. So take it away,
Sure.
team one, which would be Andrew and Sam.
Sure. Piggybacking off of Gerald and the other team, Chris, one to piggyback right off of that question, is there something that the AI didn't see? I think there's a couple different nuances. We were talking about sentiment analysis earlier. There's in the internal chat logs, you see that I was using Gemini, and it was pointing towards Alex as either the victim or the threat actor, but it didn't mention that Jordan is also on the chat log late at night. And so that would indicate that maybe his credentials have been compromised, or he is also a suspect in like an investigation. Also the sentiment changes from Alex when he's saying, yeah, I did mine earlier, and then he's saying, he's explaining why he's logged on late at night, so I thought that was interesting. I was gonna try to ask it to do sentiment analysis, but I asked it more about the timeline of the incident. As far as the other information we got, Sam posted it. Let's see. Mine was a little different. It looks like the malicious URL, a spoof domain, and the exfiltration endpoint and the target recipient. It was but let's see. I asked for a report on like the social engineering side. Here, investigative findings, methodology. The attackers used a high pressure urgent lures to bypass standard security and scrutiny. And then insider involvement. Alex is the primary point of egress. But this is where I think the AI is kind of missing the chat log that Jordan is also logged in. And chatting after usual business hours. So,
go ahead, Andrew.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so and I see there, Chris and company, thank you for adding yours in there as well. And let's see here, Sam and Andrew added a couple other pieces in the chat as well. So what's interesting that with what we provided to it, it sounded like, there could have been maybe, hopefully, possibly a little more of that actual chat log to make some augmented conclusions, I guess, a little more. I think it was still pointing in the right way as you have, but what I really liked about some of I think it was in Sam's post here, or well, Andrew's too there. I was just looking at that, but how they were, and you guys use Gemini, correct? Andrew, you said?
Yes, we were using Gemini.
So what's interesting is I love how these responses, it would have been in task one, I think under it was under Sam's post, but the second one in where it was the task 1 AI assisted log triage there for the phishing characteristics. I love, or I enjoy how this thing talks about, it adds a little bit of added component to that, describing the type squatting indicator with that domain. And you guys all talked about that. You all found it. But how many times have we seen this type squatting? I mean, we see it, I see it quite often. Like instead of Amazon.com, but it'll be like con or something else, or a typo in the like Amazon with an M instead of an N, different things like that. But the credit harvester, like I like how these are throwing in some other little keywords in here that are important. So that was good. And then Chris, you guys dropped yours up there too, which kind of piggybacks on that with the timeline, potential credential submissions and all that. So this was good. One I guess takeaway from this might be to think about that AI can help accelerate an investigation. I mean, this was a couple lines of code to, or not code, but email information, dates, times, all that stuff, to give you an idea of how we can kind of script it, work with it within a little half-hour exercise or something like that. But you can see how AI could really accelerate this if you're dealing with a large volume of emails or a significant number, frankly, of them and the connections and the contacts and everything. You can see how it could accelerate the process of maybe an investigation or getting some initial thoughts, trying to make sense out of themes or that thematic information across volumes and volumes of data. But it cannot really, at this point, replace, kind of the reasoning, like the analyst reasoning and what, at least, we're at now. But both groups were kind of talking about the roles of the people, Jordan, Alex, Sam, and where this all kind of was shaken out and the possibilities. So you're seeing this as a potential limitation that was, kind of cooked in here in a way to make people realize, yep, we still have to have a little bit of that, or maybe a lot of the human intelligence, the human oversight, the human evaluation properties. But AI can really ramp that up and give us some information that we could start picking through. I was reading an article last night about Anthropic. They're another AI out there highly regarded for their coding. I'll call it, they built in a lot of ethical premises around it. But in their, I can't say it's throughout all of their, vendors or anything, but Anthropic, like many of the AIs, they are not generating any of their own code anymore. Like AI is writing 100% of their code, where the coders are there to look for little bugs, little errors. And they're, some of the people that were in on the article yesterday, I was reading that, they weren't even making any changes now, because AI is learning so quickly how to develop code, how to write software, like software engineering. It's developing it as they need it and as they want it. Instead of months or years, it's minutes now. But it's incredible to see what AI is doing with actual coding, and yet people are still checking it, they're evaluating it, they're looking it over, kind of like what we're doing here. But it's happening so much more quickly. So I do think, and I think Gerald was touching upon this too, is like when you're looking at this, Andrew as well, about what are the roles of these people. Yeah, I might not be able to figure that out yet. So we need a little bit of that human interpretation and show. So that there, folks, was a little bit on the email. And what do you guys think? Where did AI help the most in this, in that little AI lab? Where would you think AI helped you the most?
I would
I
say,
think,
oh, sorry. You can go
go
ahead.
ahead, Chris. Go ahead, Chris.
I would say putting everything together in like a logical format so you could like keep like the timeline intact.
Yep, I agree with that. Yeah, for sure. Let's see, Andrew, you're gonna comment?
I was gonna say the biggest the most help that the AI did for me was pointing to where there are pointing to where to investigate first, as opposed to reading all the raw data. Looking at specific instances shortened the amount of time to make conclusions, and then going into the details to, like, if I were
Yes.
generating a report or something like that, if like I was part of the IT team, or I would know where to start. So yeah.
Mhm. Any other thoughts on where I helped you the most? Like
Yeah,
those are
I want to come with a different perspective, not necessarily on how it helped me. Um, when you look at the information once we put it in and then it was shared, I'm thinking more of someone that doesn't have the background at all, right? They have some inclination but don't know. And I think with for those individuals that use it, they could gather more information fairly quickly and learn it. Instead of like going to a course or something like that, right? So I'm just thinking now how it could help someone that doesn't have
yeah.
some forensic or you know um no background on what to look for, right? So I mean, I think if they saw that and they may be like, wow, that looks different, let me take this information and pop it in here and see what I get. And then they get that, then that sparks a different conversation. So I mean, I don't say that that probably won't happen, but I'm just thinking of what it could do. It provides information fairly quickly, to where if you didn't have it, you wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, yep. I agree. I 100% agree. And being able that it's dropping in, some of those, there's a billion words out there, as you all know, acronyms and everything, but I like how that can summarize key words, key points that you can be like, oh, okay, type spy, or okay, domain, whatever, this or that. And you kind of go down some other rabbit holes, and Andrew, I think it was you that were saying like, oh, maybe I could do some sentiment. Like maybe there's further ways that you can go down the rabbit hole in here.
That's the
And
sentiment analysis that I
oh,
asked
there it is. Yep.
ChatGPT to do. It's
Okay.
a longer list, but that's an example of one.
Okay. So this in your chat there, do you want to kind of talk about what prompt you
Well,
did, or what you asked that to do? Or can you share,
I,
drop the prompt in if you did one?
I asked it to do it. I just asked it a simple question. Can you do a sentiment analysis of the chat log? And then I dropped it in when Gerald was talking about how, like, education, like how it would
Yep.
empower somebody who doesn't have the education in IT, or whatever. I think, piggybacking off of that, within an organization, I think it would help people in IT to, like, bring up conversation points to people who are not IT people. For example, like, for us, it's like obvious that Alex was the weakest link here, but um it says indicates a desire to be compliant and done with a chore. There is no sign of guilt here, only a typical behavior of a victim who believes he's following orders.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
feel like that would give an IT person who, vice versa, might not have people smarts, the
Yeah.
ability to connect with HR about Alex, or with the CTO about Alex, and say, well, this is what he said, so these are the questions we have to ask him, if he was compliant, or if he was, acting as part of the wrong team.
Yeah. That's a really good piece of insight on there. There's so much, and I'm sitting here thinking about sentiment, and how different words have different meanings. So it was beautifully stated there, Andrew. But here's an example of that, of how sentiment and words are attached. So imagine in that chat log, let's say Gerald and I were exchanging a message back and forth, and uh, Jared here, we'll just use this example. How would sentiment react to this? If I were to say, Gerald, this class is sick, like, so not for Gerald to answer, but how does say, man, this class is sick, man, like this is good. Like that's how we would Gerald, maybe interpret that, or Abner, Chris, Sam, whoever, um, like my interpretation when somebody says that to me, I'm like, that means good, like that's something cool. Where would that sentiment in that word take it as negative? So is that a hallucination of AI, or is it a misinterpretation of what a word could mean? So I always think about sentiment when so in my other program we run sentiment analysis on X, or formerly like tweets or Twitter, and if people had their location enabled, we could run studies for like the Final Four basketball or the Super Bowl in a densely populated area to figure out what parts of the town or what, they're kind of a little bit obscured, so you can't see exactly what area, but you could see if there were certain bars that were more favorable for the Patriots or, or the Rams or something like that, based on different emoting and different types of X posts, or Facebook or Instagram or whatever, using hashtags. That's what, a lot of the sentiment analysis will look at will be hashtags. And then if there's a location attached, so you could see where these patterns are popping up of different sentiment real time almost. So, but those words in there are how these, how do you evaluate that? And does it go down a decision tree if it encounters a word like sick? Does it look for other evaluators in that thread or in that post? I don't know, Gerald. Thoughts, ideas, or anyone else?
Well, I have a strong interest in human engineering, social engineering, and in terms with like AI, the digital economy, and everything. I actually have a copy of the MBTI manual on my desk because I'm such a dork. Like if I have a drink on Friday night, I'll read the like the Myers-Briggs personality
Yeah,
types manual
yep.
or whatever. Um, and so if I think that would be a key indicator of uh, you know, if somebody of different types, like, or to sense like a genuine communication, like if you think that somebody's credentials have been used in their messaging in the chat log, that they might not speak in their native communication style when it
Yep.
comes to like if they're sensing, thinking, judging, or feeling things. So, I think that that's a good indicator. To kind of speak to what you were talking about of like slang, or like, I think that can be used. You can look at different maps of human consciousness that have been written and used for many years to kind of sense, how people are reacting to a situation, and it was evident in the chat, like how people like are analyzing that there's something off with Alex, and that the email was bogus, well, yeah. So um if you if you use a different prompt to do sentiment analysis through the MBTI, it'll come back something like this, um saying that Sam is sensing that the email, and he's comparing it against the reality of the situation, whereas let's see,
Yeah.
whereas Alex is thinking that he's staying late at night to help, or something like that. So I think that there are different prompts that you can ask it based on different maps that
Yep.
that are out there.
Yep. And that, it kind of goes off a little bit what you're saying there, Andrew. And then Gerald, I think you had a comment too. I want to come back to Gerald there of how, and it's actually in the next lab. One of the things we'll try to look for is somebody that, to your point, Andrew, if you know that you are possibly like, what when the antennas go up that you could be possibly being monitored, like, would you be changing? your style of language, like you're saying, that you're security aware. And so how can AI be used to look for like little clues in there, whether it's words, whether it's patterns, whether it's a change of style, like I say, you know what, this is like somebody's aware that we're watching them, you know, or her, or whoever. So yeah, I mean, all these things are really, really interesting about how you can go down different rabbit holes. And I mean, if you're bored sometime, this is what I like to do, is go down these little rabbit holes. I've never really went down like Myers-Briggs or, you know, some of these yet, but I think there's some serious language models being built around that, and sentiment, and how are people acting, responding, feeling, because there's outcomes from some of those. But Gerald?
Oh no, I was just saying that I dropped in what you know asked me about the class being sick. So in the sentiment analyst
Oh, yeah.
analyzer, it said that like 75% it would confirm that that's positive, because you said, you know, like, you know, this is a sick class man, right? I think that
Yeah.
piece added in there. But if you just had sick, then it would look at that as a negative.
Okay, okay. So it's all about the qualifiers, or the words used around it.
Words used around it, yeah, because
Yeah,
they know sick man is used as a slang, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
by using that as a slang, and kind of bumped it up within the positive area, but only 75% though, right? So it wasn't
Yeah.
even 100% sure. So
Yeah, so it's really interesting how languages themselves, much yet alone, I- you know, I hear this from, you know, I'm not a conversant speaker in a ton of other languages. Knows a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of French, but the uh, people say like English is, there's so many meanings of different words. And so if these language models are building around English language, then maybe surely they can understand other less complicated languages for words and terminology, or, you know, the order in which words are sort of expressed. There was an elderly man in my community. He would say, like in German, we would say, you know, throw my coat over the wall. But in some of the languages, they would say, throw me over the wall my coat. You know, so how would the order of those words be interpreted through language models for sentiment? So it's just kind of interesting. Great point there, Gerald. Thanks for bringing that in there too.
yep, and we know too AI have biases, right? And so culturally, you know,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I may say something different than, you know, my peers, my colleagues, or my classmates on, you know. So it also, you know, we also know that there's biases that come with AI. So you may say something, you may be looking at the same thing but say it different, and then you're going to get a
Mhm,
different outcome just by that, you know, that cultural difference, right?
mhm.
And so I mean, so it's also looking at it in that frame of reference too, because, you know, it's different, right? And we know
Yeah.
that they have those biases in there that we always have to be aware of.
So speaking of that, bring up a great point about, now I can't remember, this was a couple months ago, I was reading this, that there was a different AI models, like language models, had different biases built in to different responses, Gerald, to what you were talking about. So for instance, it had to do with like religion and preservation of different ethnic groups. So the models would act depending on the context of what was the, you know, really the question framed. It would stereotype against certain type of individuals based on what it was fed to begin with, about how there might be predisposed biases, or how it should rank, you know, internally in these models, how it would rank ethnicity or gender or whatever it is to be more promoted or socially acceptable, or so whatever it was. So you'd find that what would you'd expect to be non-bias really was turning into biasing certain groups of people, or certain religions, or certain cultures, or demographic groups, that it was just built in to how it was learning and how it was responding based on that. So you're absolutely right on that. I think it's kind of one of the early things that all AIs are going through right now is to figure out, hey, we're learning, we're learning what we need to do, what we can't do, what we need to do more of, what we need to train better, so that, in the end, that there really is hopefully an unbiased approach to everything. But I don't know if that's possible, but we'll see. Stay tuned. All right. Any other thoughts on this? Great discussion here, folks.
I think both of you were. It reminded me of the world's most highly translated philosopher. I don't want to go too far into the weeds into philosophy because it's a tech class. We're talking about AI, but he, in his book, A Brief History of Everything, he talks about something called the miracle of understanding, and he's talking about intersubjective space, like when we're having shared languages and shared words and shared experiences. I think you asked what the limitation of AI is. And I think that, like, you were talking a little bit about it now, and I think a question that we should ask is that, can it's never going to be an intuitive space. So like if you say something to your coworker, they might not understand you, but they feel what you mean, and then they can ask you a question back to gain a greater understanding. Or if two people from different cultures, different mindsets, but different backgrounds, different space, if one person says one thing and the other person doesn't get it, they can ask a question based on their own inferences to gain understanding. Whereas an AI, it might not be able to do that, So
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. This is in going through that. That's kind of the sidebars. We take these little sidebar labs and we start looking at them. This is a great richness of discussion that we can get into to think more about, not just AI, but, like, man, what's going on within the common good of mankind, or humankind there. So just some great thought-provoking discussions come out of these little labs here, so I'm appreciative.
It happened in class the other 2 weeks ago. I think Gerald called John by your last name. You're like, it's just John, and then Gerald's like said, I'm from the South, and it's a sign of respect. And then it's like, so I had a conversation with my friend from the South, and that exact thing came up in conversation, and he was like, yeah, everybody calls me Mr. Troy instead of Mr. Boutain. So I don't know. I think that's a good example of, like, the miracle of understanding how, if a language model or an AI said that, like, you might not be able to come to the same conclusion as having a conversation with a real human, at least as quickly,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's wasn't even intending on getting. I didn't know we would get that. I'll call it the appreciable depths of discussion with that. And so these are always kind of the aha moments that make class really rewarding, to be able to see that, think about that, understanding the cultural differences, and that, we can't find ways to always get there, and whether it's your feeling or, expression of, that emotion. So it's great comments there, guys. Wonderful. Okay, let's see here. So I did have one. It's probably a little bit more of an involved lab. It looks like we maybe had another person that had to leave there or whatever. So we have basically 5 of us here left. We can run. Oh, Chris, go ahead.
You never told us what your results were from the last one. Was it Alex?
In general, it was roughly speaking the same thing.
Okay.
That there were, the main key takeaway that I had was, AI, there's some confusion, possibly, like, if we had more data, then AI would be maybe leveraged a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, everything that you guys hit was pretty much spot on.
Okay.
I was going to say with exception too, but there is no exception, other than that AI can be an accelerator, but there's still the need for us to look at things. And that's the key point. And we uncovered that, with Alex or Jordan, or maybe needing more data. But yeah, everything you guys had in your chat was good. I'm sorry, Chris. Yep.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
It was good. Yep, very good. So if you guys would like to keep forging ahead, I have one that deals with mobile devices, similar type of strategy, although I put this second because I didn't know if we were gonna have enough time, depending on how long we went with Jake or, with the other lab, being that we only had 5 people hanging on, it didn't take quite as long as I maybe I'd have planned for, but I do have a student worksheet that I can drop in the chat for you, and I can add like a discussion forum in our materials for week 7 if you want to drop in some of your outputs, and I can chime in on there. That is only if you don't want to do it in class, but I want to at least give you that material so that you can practice it. I'll show you what it looks like, and then you can decide what you may want to do. I built this just in case if we ran out of time, I could at least get it to you. But we do have time, I think, to go through this, but this was a class handout I was going to give to you on mobile data forensics, and kind of the same thing. I kept the same theme. You guys are forensic analysts, and I was going to drop this in the chat either way for us here, so you'd have it rather than kind of piecemealed out like I was doing it. For an internal corporate investigation, you're looking for an employee suspected of exfiltrating some proprietary designs. It kind of goes back to that one lab where we had with the Tor, I think it was like the Tor document, we were trying to find like patents that were, released out there. It kind of was on those lines. It kind of kept it kind of like if somebody was in there taking like little photos and sending them out, or maybe proprietary data. But this is about mobile devices. So forensics image on their phones, or the phone has extracted that. So I mentioned like Celebrite, they're probably one of the more premier versions. So we're kind of assuming it went through Celebrite or another type of mobile device extractor and provided artifacts. So those artifacts are everything in with location, and whether it's a video or photo, text messages, you name it, those are the artifacts that we'll be working with. But your task for this AI was to determine whether or not the device was used to transfer sensitive information, any suspicious communication patterns, like with SMS, the short messaging, like text messages, correlate locations, timing, maybe if there was any unique network or Wi-Fi activity to when things were being sent or communicated. So it's kind of putting together a puzzle piece again here, similar to the email, but a lot more vast. There's a lot more artifacts in this one. And then a short summary is just similar to what we did, kind of talking about these types of things. But the deliverables for the discussion again was, if we're, have the breakout sessions, was sensitive data exfiltrated? That should be pretty paramount. Was the activity premeditated? There could be some clues in there. What artifacts are the strongest? And then again, I like to have this one in there just for us to think about is what could AI misinterpret? Again, the human element. So to run this by everybody, there are really 4 objectives that I have, and I just call them phases, but one was artifact collection. So I give you some sample prompts here that you could try, to take a look at the artifacts below. I have a big evidence packet below right here. But you could use some of my prompts, but your goal is to look for anomalies. Here are some examples for what you might be able to look for in your prompts. And these prompts largely should do the trick, but if you wanted to, I encourage you to branch off, try some different things. So that's number 1. Objective number 1 is to conduct an artifact collection. Number 2 is to analyze the coordinates, so location correlation, see when and where this may have occurred, Wi-Fi connection logs, message timestamps. And again, I have a little sample prompt here, but your goal is to try to determine Wi-Fi connectivity times, coordinates, message information, confirmations, etc. And then the third one is behavioral pattern analysis, which is, can you use AI? Essentially, your goal is, can AI find evidence of intentional data exfiltration, and what artifacts may suggest that security awareness? Somebody had their guard up. Are they looking for ways to bypass that? Can you verify that with the human element? Check it against the raw data. Again, I have some sample prompts for you individually or in your group to try. And then a short timeline construction, kind of like what you did before. So here was your evidence packet that I was going to give you, and each one of these corresponds to each phase that I referred to up above. So for instance, type of phone, call history, and some of the messaging, the photo metadata. Actually, there's a couple more evidence areas here. So you can analyze all these together, in fact. Network Wi-Fi history. So this evidence packet would simulate what you would receive from like a Celebrite or some of the labs that we're working on for this week. Yeah, for this week. And so this is what you'd be some samples of things that you'd be analyzing. So we're just doing it from a timeline reconstruction, a behavioral pattern analysis with prompts, location correlation, and then artifact collection, which is probably the biggest one of this lab. So that would be what I would give you. I'm just going to stop sharing here in a second here. I'm just going to pause the recording. All right, thank you everyone for attending. We're going to continue some of our online work this week in the discussion forum that pertains to some of the mobile data forensics. So otherwise, thank you everybody for a great week 7, and we'll look forward to more things to come. Thank you.